Harry died. What?
I said, I can still hear you. Just make sure I get those.
Like, we're live right now?
Yeah, we're live right now.
No.
We are live right now.
What up? Woo!
Give you guys a little bit to tune in.
Except they're not in the picture.
A couple minutes. What is this stuff? Well, this is my fat cell. This is my fat cell. This is like the 5th time that we've tried to do this video. So I'm doing it solo. This is my fat cell. I need you to turn that volume down.
I was trying to listen.
So we're doing this solo, so if you ask me any questions, I'm not going to be able to see those questions, and so I trust the assistant Laura is going to let me know if you have any questions. These are not tennis balls in my pocket. I'm just happy to see everybody. So this is going to be my fat cell. This is going to be my muscle cell. And this is just what I'm going to dump. Don't even worry about that green thing. That's just so I don't have balls everywhere. Which sometimes that's good, but in the gym we don't like that. Okay, so today we are going to talk about heart rate based training. And that is really how I like everybody to train is with a heart rate based training, right? Wearing a heart rate monitor, okay? We use Polar. The big reason why we use Polar heart rate Polar heart rate straps is because they've been around the longest. They have the basically the most established heart rate technology. That's really the only reason. Okay, it is a chest strap as opposed to like something down your wrist. The chest strap is closer to your heart rate. It's going to be able to pick up your heart rate better, especially when you're really working hard, right? So first, how do we put a heart monitor on? So basically, you're gonna get a strap. To use our system, we use Bluetooth heart rate based monitors. So they're H7, I think it's H7 or H8 and H10. But basically, it's just you go on Amazon, you type in Bluetooth heart rate monitor, Polar, and then it'll come up. I think it's like 50 or 60 bucks. So when you put those heart monitors on, you don't want it to be too tight, and you don't want it to be too loose. Too loose is really easy. It's better to actually be looser than it is to be tighter. So too loose is relatively easy. Too loose is when you bring your arms up over top of your head, the strap moves on you. Okay, that's too loose. Okay, too tight's a little bit harder to figure out because what will end up happening is they have the sensor and they put the sensor on the elastic of the strap that goes around your chest, right? And so what will happen is if you're wearing your heart rate monitor, if you're wearing your heart rate strap too tight, you'll start to tear or you'll start to peel off the sensor strip off of the elastic. And when you have that start to happen, A, it means that you're wearing your strap too tight, okay? But also, B, what's going to end up happening is your strap's basically just going to start shitting the bed. It's not going to have very good conductivity on your skin. It's going to drop in, it's going to drop out, it's just going to stop working, right? So as far as it goes, like too tight would be where you put it on and it just feels restrictive and you just feels like you can't breathe, right? That's too tight. It's always better to be a little bit looser than it is to be a little bit tighter. When you put your heart rate strap, your heart monitor on, you want to make sure that it is moist, okay? So you can, if it's your own strap, you can lick it and put it on. That's whatever you want to do, it's your own strap. If it's a loaner that you get from us, I would highly recommend not licking it and putting it on. But what you can do is you can use like an alcohol-based hand cleaner. You can use a little bit of water. It just needs to be moist, right? It needs to be moist so that so that it has a better conductivity, okay? And it can pick up your heart rate better. We talk about zone training, or we talk about heart rate-based training. Generally, it's going to be 5 zones, right? Now, for our app, the app that we use, they're colored zones, but generally speaking, it goes 90 to 100%. That would be like your zone 5. And then it would go 80 to 90%, that would be your zone 4. And then we would go 70 to 80%, that would be your zone 3. Your zone 2 would be 60 to 70, and then your zone 1 would be 50 to 60. So what do those zones correspond to? So your zone 5, that is hard work, okay? That is, you should really only be able to sustain that amount of output for about 10 to 20 seconds, right? And for us, that's a red zone. Okay, so that's your zone 5. 10 to 20 seconds, that's about the most amount of effort that you should be able to put into that, right? Your zone 4, which is going to be 80 to 90%. Now, some people might be able to stay in that zone for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Cool, that's fine. Okay. Your zone 4, you're going to be working hard, but you're not going to be working as hard as your zone 5. And so your zone 5 is really like basically when you're doing work in zone 5, you are not going to be able to sustain that intensity for a high amount of time. And that's really what we're going after, is we want a high amount of intensity, okay? High intensity. And that's why the training that we do in here is high intensity interval training, which I'm going to get to in a couple seconds. So your 80 to 90% is going to be your zone 4. Your 70 to 80% is going to be your zone 3. That's your recovery zone, right? And so when we do classes, we want your heart rate to get to 85%. And then what will happen is you'll stop at 85%, and most people's heart rate will continue to increase until it gets to 90%. And that's great. We want you to rest until you get to 70%. So we basically want you to go until you get almost into the red zone, and then you're going to rest until you get to the bottom of the blue zone, yellow zone, what's the?
Green.
Green zone. So you're going to rest until you get to the end of the green zone, okay? Big reason why we like heart rate-based training over 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, right? Two big reasons. First reason is that it's highly individualized, right? And so if you're a beginner and you come in, well, you're going to need a lot more rest than somebody who has been in the gym for 6 months. And so by putting a heart rate strap on you, it allows us to truly individualize the amount of work that you're doing, okay? So that's the first reason, is that it is about as individual as you can possibly get. The second reason why we like heart rate-based training is because it allows you to work out at a high level of intensity every round that you start a new exercise. So why is intensity important, right? Intensity is important because intensity drives afterburn, and intensity also drives the amount of calories that you're burning while you work out, in addition to driving the amount of fat that you break down during your workout to replenish your carbohydrates so that you have intensity to be able to put out during that bout of exercise, okay? So what is afterburn? Afterburn is basically, a lot of people understand that after you do exercise, specifically resistance training, or specifically exercise that breaks down muscle tissue, you have an increased metabolic burn after that, right? And that's really what we want, okay? So if you were to go out and you were just run for 2 miles or 3 miles, generally speaking, your heart rate is going to stay steady in that 70 to 80% range, maybe the 80 to 90% range, depending on how hard you're running, right? But it's going to stay steady. And that's just called steady state conditioning, right? That's not bad. It's totally great. It's not great for weight loss, okay? Steady state conditioning has its purposes and it has a reason to do it, but we're not going to get into today. But steady state conditioning, meaning running at the same pace, is a terrible modality for weight loss. And I don't want to talk about why. I just want you guys to understand that. So interval training is much better. So we go back to that afterburn. When you do resistance training, or when you're doing a conditioning class where you're breaking down muscle tissue, which means you do have to work hard in order to be able to do that, which means that you have to drive your intensity level up. That process of breaking down muscle tissue is what helps increase your afterburn. Now, the clinical definition of afterburn is something called excess post-oxygen consumption. I like to call it exercise post-oxygen consumption because it makes a hell of a lot more sense, because that's really what it is. And basically what that is that your body, when you're working out, you increase the amount of oxygen that you pull in, right? You start to breathe heavy, okay? And what that does is that creates an oxygen debt in the body, right? And that oxygen debt has to be replenished. And so one of the ways that we replenish it immediately is, right, breathing hard, okay? That's the way that we replenish that oxygen debt immediately. But that doesn't replenish all of the oxygen debt that we accumulate during the workout. That's where, over the course of the next 48 to 72 hours, that's where we can really replenish that oxygen debt, right? So the afterburn happens because your body has an increased metabolic rate due to the fact that you've done some resistance training, you've broken down some muscle tissue, and now the body says, hey, I have to repair this muscle tissue. That means that I'm building. That means that I'm increasing the amount of calories that I'm burning at rest. And then the other reason why that happens is because it wants to replenish all of the oxygen that it spent during the workout, and that takes a little bit of time, right? So that is afterburn. The higher your afterburn, the greater the amount of calories that you burn at rest. And the way that you increase your afterburn is by doing things at a high level of intensity. You guys sense this constant theme that comes up. High level of intensity, high level of intensity, right? Okay, so what happens when you're working out? Let's say that I go out and I run 2 miles. Well, and let's say that 2 miles takes me 20 minutes. So I'm running on a 10, actually no, that's a little bit too slow. Let's go with 16 minute, for me, 16 minute 2 miles. That's trucking, okay? That means that I most likely, if I do an 8-minute mile and I do 2 miles, that's 16 minutes, okay? And if I were to break that down and I say, okay, an 8-minute mile, that means that I'm going to run every 100 meters at a certain amount of time, right? Basically where I'm going with this is that the first part of your first mile, you will be able to run faster than you will at the end. And the reason why that is because as you start to run, you're not breathing hard. But about 10 seconds in, 20 seconds in, 30 seconds in, depending on your conditioning, you're starting to breathe hard. And what that means is that you are progressing through the zones. And once you start to breathe hard, generally speaking, you're going to be at the top of that zone 3, or you're definitely squarely in the zone 4, right? So zone 3 is that 70% to 80% of your max heart rate. That will be where you're going to start to breathe hard, right? Anything below 70%, you may or may not be breathing hard. It's probably going to be like conversational pace, meaning that you'll be able to move around. Like I could jog and I could still have a conversation. That probably means that I'm below 70%. So I go out there, I start doing my 8-minute mile, right? About a minute in, and I'm breathing really hard. So now I have to slow down. Well, why do I have to slow down? Well, I have to slow down because I'm breathing hard, okay? And so your body has a natural governor on it. The body basically says, listen, I cannot continue to put out work at the intensity that you just did for the last minute, or 30 seconds, or 20 seconds, or whatever. If you want me to continue that intensity, I need to slow you down for a little bit so that I'm able to basically replenish the energy. Okay, so let's talk about that real quick. So this is a muscle cell, okay? This is a muscle cell, this is a fat cell. Now, when I go and I do my first mile and I hit my first 30 seconds really hard, high level of intensity, these are all sugar, this is all glucose, okay? All these atoms are glucose. I understand they're different sizes, all right? Listen, this is a free live video, so don't bust my balls about that. So, I burn through all of this sugar, right? The first 20 and 30 seconds, I burn through all the sugar that's stored in my muscle. The muscle no longer has that sugar. That means that I'm going to increase my respiration rate. Because when I start to bring in oxygen, my body uses that oxygen as a way to break down a fat cell, right? Or fat in your body. So here's my fat cell. It's full of fat. So as I break this down. I'm going to put this over here. This fat molecule gives me some sugar molecules. I put those sugar molecules into my muscles, and then I burn this sugar off, and then I replenish the sugar, okay? So that is a self-governing process, meaning that you cannot force this you can improve this process, but you cannot really force it to work faster or harder. The only way that improves is through diet and just basically through conditioning exercises, okay? So that whole thing is called hitting the wall. So I'm going hard during my first mile, 20 seconds, and I start to breathe hard. Now I have to slow down. I hit the wall. I have to slow down to allow my body to be able to break down the fat, break it down into sugar, put it into the muscle cell so that I can still continue this pace, right? Now let's apply this to an actual conditioning workout that we do at KDR. So I'm going to say, okay, I want you to work for 30 seconds, okay? And I'm going to use me as an example. So when I came back from chemotherapy, I could not go up one flight of stairs, 10 stairs. I could not go up one flight of stairs without having to lean over and suck in air for about 2 minutes. So one flight of stairs would take me anywhere between a minute to 2 minutes to catch my breath right after chemotherapy. And that lasted for about 6 months after chemo. So I had to get my conditioning level back because in the grand scheme of things, the higher your conditioning level is, then the more weight you're going to be able to lift, and the better you're going to recover, and generally speaking, the healthier you're going to be, right? So I did our team training classes at KDR. And the problem was that it would take me only about 20 seconds. I would wear a heart rate strap. It would take me about 20 seconds for my heart rate to get into the red, meaning it got above 90%. And then it would take me 2 to 3 minutes to rest, right? Well, if we just did a basic 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, first of all, 30 seconds, my heart rate, it only took me 15 or 20 seconds to get my heart rate into the red, right? That means I should stop, because that means that I've burned through all of my sugar and I need to give my body a chance to recover. Now, 30 seconds of rest, for me in the state that I was in, that was not long enough for me. I needed 2 minutes of rest. But because if I just did a regular 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, I would have an incomplete recovery, which is okay in some things, right? But an incomplete recovery means that my intensity is not at the highest level that I can get it. And when you take that, when you work for that period of time, and you rest for that period of time, when you go back to your work again, we want you to be able to put the same amount of intensity. So the 20th exercise that you do, okay, should be at the same level of intensity as your first exercise. And the only way that you can make that happen, if you're truly putting out a lot of intensity on your first exercise, the only way you can make that happen is by allowing your body to recover, to break down this stored fat, to be able to turn it into sugar, to be able to put it into the muscle, and then for the muscle to burn that off, and you repeat that process. It's the only way that you can have the 20th exercise that you do be the same level as the first exercise. So going back to me with chemo. So coach is like, okay, everybody, we're going to do 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, right? And Ben, you're going to do 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. Yeah, I understand that you just fought for your life for the last year, but you know what? You're going to suck it up and you're going to do 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. All right, so I'd make it through 3 rounds, and then I'd probably throw up myself. Because 3 rounds, 3 total minutes, I am not going to be able to recover. By the time the 3rd round starts, my heart rate would probably still be in the red, okay? But the coach is telling me to do that, and so I have to do that. Now, we do heart rate-based training, so now I have a polar heart rate strap on me. And the coach says, okay, Ben, I want you to work until you get to 85% of your max heart rate, and then you're going to rest until your heart rate drops back down to 70% of your max heart rate. I say, okay, cool. Well, now, what's going to end up happening is I'm going to work until my heart rate gets to 85%. And then I'm going to rest until my heart rate gets to 70%. And in that process of me resting for 2 or 3 minutes, then other people might actually go through 2 or 3 bouts of work and rest before I can actually start my second one. And that's totally fine, because we're going at my ability level. I'm not going at the ability level of the class. I'm going at my personal individualized ability level, right? It's a big reason why I think heart rate-based training is the best way to go about conditioning in large groups. So we go through that bout of exercise. We go through that bout of high-intensity exercise. I say to you, listen, I want you to be able to put out the exact same amount of intensity in the next bout of high-intensity interval training that you do. HIIT, right? This is the classic HIIT, high-intensity interval training. That is one of the best ways for to get weight off of somebody. That's also one of the best ways to improve somebody's conditioning. There's a bunch of different cool studies that have been done on this, comparing it to steady state. Steady state meaning that you go out, you run at the same level for the same amount of time, like an 8-minute mile for 3 miles, right? Or a 10-minute mile for 3 miles, or a 15-minute mile for 3 miles. That would be steady state, and then the high-intensity interval training is that you're going to work for a period of time. For us, true high-intensity interval training is based off your heart rate. If you do 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, that is not true high-intensity interval training, because you are not able to recover at a high enough level for you to be able to put into that high intensity for your next bout of exercise, right? All right. So we have that person, they come in, they work hard until they get to 85% or until they get to the red, and then they rest. That process of resting allows the body to break down stored fat and replenish sugar into the muscle, so that when your heart rate drops back down to 70%, you are good to go. Your muscle is fueled up. You have sugar to be able to put a lot of intensity into that next bout, and you burn that sugar off. Your heart rate gets up to 85% or the red. Then you stop. You break down more fat during that stop period, during that rest period. You get more sugar into the muscle. And you repeat for the entire workout, right? Now, there's a couple different things that can impact your body's ability to break down fat during the workout and turn it into sugar. Basically, sleep, carbohydrates are too low. So some of you members that are on the ketogenic diet, if you notice that you don't have a top gear, or you don't have a fifth gear, or you notice that, man, this is really, really hard for me to get my heart rate above 85%. Well, that's because on a ketogenic diet, you're not eating a lot of sugar, right? And so you don't have a lot of stored sugar in the muscle, and so it's harder for you to push into that upper zone, okay? So that's basically what happens when you are doing high-intensity interval training and you're working with an appropriate level of intensity, meaning as hard as you possibly can go, and you are resting so that your heart rate drops back down into that 70%, so that you can fuel the muscle to have a high level of intensity. Holy shit, I hope you guys are so tired of me saying high level intensity, but I'm trying to drill this point home, right? As opposed to saying, well, I'm just going to work for 30 seconds and rest for 30 seconds, okay? You are not going to create as much of an afterburn during that workout. You will also not burn as many calories. You will not have as many, as big of a deflection. All that means is that when you're done with us, you can look at your training on a graph and you can see these big peaks and valleys. The bigger the peak is relative to the valley, the better. We want a high peak and we want a low valley. Because that process of the low valley, so going from the high peak to the low valley, that means that you're recovering, you are breaking down fat to turn it into sugar, to be able to put that into the muscle, so that when you get to that 70% at the lowest part of the valley, it allows you to be able to ramp back up and get to the highest peak, so that each peak is the same, right? Okay. Did I hit everything? She's looking through Facebook. That's why she doesn't know if I hit everything.
No, it's because I went to the live screen so I can see comments.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, intensity, yes. Afterburn, yes.
Cool.
Just going hard to support weight, yes. Why we use heart rate based workouts. Yep. All of it.
Cool. Any questions?
There was one.
One question? That's it from you guys?
One question.
One question. That means y'all didn't watch this very, very closely. Or that means I did a great job explaining it. What's the one question?
Is the 6-week challenge free?
Oh boy. Do an orientation. Sign up. Sign up for an orientation. We go over all the details of the 6-week challenge during that orientation.
Everyone else said hi and cool beans.
Hi and cool beans. Right back at you. If you guys have any questions, you can post it in the comment section. And hopefully this makes some sense as to why we like heart rate based training. Why we're going to be moving towards heart rate based training for all of our conditioning classes. And basically just why going hard. You know, well, I'm just going to go out and I'm just going to run hard, right? Or I'm just going to go out and I'm just going to hold the same pace for a period of time. Why that isn't the best modality for weight loss. It has its purposes. It just is not the best thing for weight loss. So hopefully all that makes sense. And we answered some questions that maybe you guys have. And like I said, if you have any questions, you can post in the comment section and I'll get back to you.